Dear Boomers, I was wondering this morning whether it is time to revive the Gray Panthers movement, which was very active in the 70s, late 70s and 80s. It was founded by a wonderful activist by the name of Maggie Kuhn, who died in 1995. She was known for getting very agitated when she was forced to retire at age 65 because that was the mandatory retirement age at the time. And so she then got involved in nursing home reform and generally fighting ageism. And she claimed that old people and women constitute America's largest untapped and undervalued human energy source. She dedicated her life to human rights and to social and economic justice, global peace, integration, and an understanding of mental health issues. They organized all kinds of activist sort of things. They blocked entrance to pharmaceutical companies. They actually, were instrumental in having legislation created for the older folks here in this country. She, unbelievably enough, combined her activism with caring for a disabled mommy and a brother who suffered from mental illness. So in 1970, she was working for a job that she loved in the Presbyterian Church, and she was forced, as I said, to retire at age 65. And that she banded together with other retirees and formed the movement that became known as the Gray Panthers. And it was originally called the Consultation of Older and Younger Adults for Social Change. But she was invited to go on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, and he renamed the movement to Gray Panthers, and that title stuck. And it's funny. I mean, Johnny Carson is the reason for the name, the Gray Panthers, which that title alone probably helped elevate it to what it became known. Johnny Carson said he thought her movement was a lot like the Black Panthers, and then that was linked to all issues of injustice. And so it really wasn't restricted to elder rights, even though it also focused on peace, presidential elections, poverty and civil liberties. And then the movement turned its attention to the Vietnam War, which, as we know, was a huge movement back in the day, and is becoming a huge movement today, anti-war movement for all the wars, but especially the one that seems to be escalating at a degree that nobody can seemingly control. There was a woman who, at the time, was murdered and robbed of $309 after cashing a check. And Kuhn enlisted the help of Ralph Nader, one of my favorite people of all time. I have to tell a story about Ralph Nader before I go on here. We were activists against the nuclear power back in right after the 3 Mile Island accident. How we defined our activism was by creating a guerrilla theater group, and we took to the streets, and at one point I played a consumer of nuclear energy, and then my brother played radiation behind me with colorful scarves. And I think our intention was to counter the complete negative, and so negative, that, okay, after 30 years, you're all going to die of cancer because you live in this area of the nuclear power accident. But nevertheless, we had fun, and we went to Washington, D.C. to do our little act in front of 20,000 people. And Ralph Nader was at the steps of the podium, and he helped us all up. And then when we came down, he said, Good job, everybody. And I never forgot that. I thought he was such a great guy. And so anyway, Ralph Nader set up a meeting with the First Pennsylvania Bank, and the bank agreed to establish special checks-drawn savings accounts for people over 65 free of charge and make loans more accessible to older people. So she knew who to hitch her wagon with, and he had the power to help her do certain things that would not have ordinarily been made possible. The Great Panther movement was, their motto was age and youth in action. So her ideal was to join the older people with the younger people, which is what we're talking about here, is that people need to work together of all generations. And that is what she was known for. Many of the people who worked for her were actually high school and college students. They didn't work for her, but they worked in her movement. She thought that teens should be taken more seriously, just as the older people should be taken seriously and given more responsibility in our society. She thought that this disregard for the young and the old was an example of fast-paced exploitive culture, wasting vital human resources. Oh, this is very interesting. So the Great Panthers combated the then popular disengagement theory, which argues that old age involves a necessary separation from society as a prelude to death. So that automatically made people isolated, older people isolated from American lifestyle, and for treating the old as a problem of society and not as persons experiencing the problems created by society. She accused the gerontologists of perpetuating the illusion of old people as incapacitated, noting that grant money seemed to favor such research. She called into question the representation of old people in popular media. Also, she raised controversy by discussing the sexuality of older people and shocked the public with her assertion that older women who outlive men by an average of 8 years could develop a sexual relationship with younger men or each other. And she took a stance on Social Security as well, arguing that politicians had created an intergenerational war over federal funds in order to divert public attention from the budgetary issues, all the money going into the Pentagon, all the war machine, overspending on the military, and extravagant tax breaks for the rich. Now we know that some of these things haven't changed, and maybe we should get back on our horse and fight these issues. The war machine, and the tax breaks for the rich, the trickle-down economics, which is ridiculous. And the rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. Housing for the elderly she called them glorified playpens. Which acknowledged that they helped to keep seniors safe, but also she contended that they segregated the elderly from mainstream society. And so this is interesting because I think their activism at the time was shocking to the mainstream American lifestyle. And I think that it's time to maybe re-energize this movement. It still is in existence, and the Great Panthers are instrumental in helping with elder abuse. And I must say, and unless a person steps up and acknowledges a problem that may be happening to them, and unless they acknowledge it and ask for help, they're not going to, in other words, if you report something that you believe is suspicious about how an elderly person is being treated, which my husband and I had the experience with this with a friend. We went to the Office of the Aging. They called them And they called this wonderful man that we love so much in his mid-80s. The man was absolutely so with it. He worked with watches, but he had a woman living with him that was very abusive. And when the Office of the Aging reached out to ask him if he needed help, he said no. So if a person is not willing to get the help, they're not going to get it. That's all there is to it. Please subscribe to the channel because I am really interested in getting 1,000 subscribers by the end of May. And when I get that, I can monetize the channel and keep doing these videos. And I keep coming up with ideas. I think the boomers have an amazing resource of help for the younger, for the older. We should not take it if we are being discounted. And dear boomers, you have all the power. Use it. And until next time, love to all. Bye-bye.